we bring you the economics, science and culture behind what we eat and drink. Today we're talking about food and identity. What happens to a dish as it leaves its country's borders? Can pizza served in Shanghai still be thought of as Italian food? And is an authentic Indian restaurant outside of India less authentic? And what about our own personal recipes? Should other people be allowed to borrow from the dishes we hand down from the generations? Or should we be more generous and allow the world to take our flavours and make them their own? Whose food is it anyway? We wade into a passionate dispute over the roots of the West African dish, jollof rice.
You know, when you're growing up, it's quite insulated and you think that the world revolves around all the things that you do. So it was quite surprising to find that we didn't actually own jollof rice and that other people made it.
And we ask, can you patent a recipe? The intellectual property laws behind your next delicious concoction.
But no chef is trying to prevent inspired creativity. Chefs are trying to prevent blatant copying.
All that and more on The Food Chain on the BBC World Service. But first, 8 chicken thighs, 1 teaspoon of ground coriander, 1 teaspoon of ground white pepper, vegetable oil, 600 grams cherry tomatoes on the vine. Well, that's the start of a recipe that sounds tasty and innocent enough, but it sparked a global food fight. Jollof rice is a classic and much-loved West African dish made using blended peppers, tomatoes and onions. But when British celebrity chef Jamie Oliver created his own twist on jollof rice and posted the recipe on his website this summer, he caused an uproar. Hundreds of commenters complained on his website that he had failed to be authentic to the original.
I am a thoroughbred Ghanaian through and through. We may not have much as Africans at the moment, but what we do have are traditions, pride and love of our culture. Please respect it, and though you are a great chef, promise to never, never again attempt this.
But why does he need to make it his own? European twist means it's no longer African. Colonize our food like our lands, I guess.
This is ridiculous. Recipes are always being reinvented and having twists added or chefs making their own interpretations of them. So why should this one be any different? Jamie also states that it's his recipe, not the native country's recipe.
Well, a statement from Jamie Oliver's team has said that obviously there was no intention to offend anyone, which is why the recipe printed on the Jamie magazine website is described as Jamie's twist on jollof rice. So what's the issue? Some people believe that Jamie Oliver, in creating his own version of this uniquely West African dish, changed a recipe that wasn't his to change, that he appropriated somebody else's food and with it a part of their cultural identity. But the question of whom jollof rice really belongs to is a complicated one. Nigeria, Senegal, Ghana, Cameroon and Botswana all lay claim to the original. But the dish seems to be most deeply entrenched in Nigerian and Ghanaian culture, with both countries claiming the way that they make it is the best. So, we visited 2 restaurants, one Ghanaian and one Nigerian, and brought their versions of jollof back to our colleagues at the BBC Africa service during their morning meeting. While we were there, we asked Peter Okwache, presenter of Focus on Africa, who is Nigerian, and Vera Kwakofi, current affairs editor for Africa, who is Ghanaian, to give us their views. Who has the greater claim to jollof?
This one tastes a bit sweeter.
Yeah. I think this is Nigerian.
I think this is the one I'm holding is Ghanaian because it's I don't know, it's just the look of the rice.
Yeah, I think it's the look that makes me think so. I mean, there's something in this other one that I don't understand. I can't figure out the taste, so I don't know what it is.
Probably rosemary or something like that, some spice or something like that. But it's the look of the rice. That you know, because Ghanaians, we like our jollof to look really posh. So I think it's basmati rice that they've cooked this with. So it's just the look of it. Whereas, I don't know, Nigerians, you like the rough and ready look. I know my Ghanaian
Jamie
people.
Oliver has got nothing on us. It's nice and peppery.
There we go.
It's very good.
You know, when you're growing up, it's quite insulated, and you think that the world revolves around all the things that you do. So it was quite surprising, and I think a bit shocking for me and disappointing for me to find that we didn't actually own jollof rice and that other people made it too. And then I made friends from Gambia and Senegal, and they made benichin, which is similar to jollof rice. And some people say that the word jollof rice comes from Wolof, which is the language spoken in Gambia, Senegal, as Wolof rice. And benichin is similar to that. It's just, you know, you don't have the same intensity of tomato use that you would with benichin as you would with jollof rice, the way we do further down in West Africa, yeah.
To be honest, I was disappointed to find out that the word jollof came from Wolof. To me, jollof rice is a Nigerian invention. It will always be. I think we cook it best.
Dream on.
I think we cook it best.
Oh God, no. That one, no.
You see, I mean,
No.
do.
Because if somebody had a plate of Ghanaian jollof rice next to a Nigerian man, please, presentation alone, we score higher marks.
No, I don't think so. Listen, jollof rice, you mix everything in the pot. You mix everything at the same time. So ours comes out, it's not meant to look like, some arty design or something of the sort.
But that's part of the presentation, though, isn't it? The way the food looks.
We don't really care about presentation, it should
That's
just
the difference between Nigeria and Ghana, by the way.
Well, there you go. Well, there you go. Listen, but as long as it tastes good, they can present it as nicely as they want. Ours tastes better because we have everything in it.
It looks nice when the Ghanaians make it, and it tastes delicious when the Ghanaian makes it.
Well, I wouldn't agree with you on that one.
No, I think what we're passionate about is the fact that jollof rice has an identity as a West African dish. It's adapted differently depending on where you go up and down the coast of West Africa. We want it to be respected and acknowledged as a West African dish, and anybody who does that with any meal from anywhere in the world acknowledges where it comes from. Where we have a problem is when somebody else decides to co-opt the dish and tries to make it a West African dish. Don't sell it in my name.
I agree with Vera. I've eaten jollof rice for all my life. I've never seen jollof rice served with lemon wedges before. So that's the kind of problem I have.
Or the bits of tomato floating over the top
over
of
the
it.
top, whatever that kind of rice is, and you call it something else, and you offer it to me, I might taste it. But if you call it jollof rice, then I won't, because I'll look at it and know this is definitely not jollof rice. It's a dish that unites the whole of West Africa when it's eaten across the region, and we do it differently. But even when we do it differently, we recognize that this is jollof rice and it's ours.
Peter Okwache and Vera Kokofi from the BBC World Service. This fight over jollof rice proves just how preciously we guard our favourite recipes. The thing about food, though, is we all want to try each other's flavours. Cooks are always borrowing ideas from each other, aren't they? Just this week, on my dinner table at home, we had Iranian, American and Hungarian cuisines, and none of the recipes were mine. Now, obviously for me, cooking at home, that's not a problem. But when you're a chef and your food is on display to the world, how do you ensure that you're doing justice to the dish you're trying to make, especially when that dish belongs to another country? Is there such a thing as authenticity when it comes to our food? James Ramsden is a British food writer and blogger who's travelled the world collecting ideas for his recipes. I spoke to him about the pressure to be true to another country's cuisine.
Authenticity in itself is an imaginary construct. People talk about authentic Thai food, and you'd assume that authentic Thai food involves chilies, but chilies didn't get to Thailand until the 16th century. So for thousands of years, people in Thailand were cooking without chilies. If it's been cooked outside Thailand, it's not Thai food, full stop. There needs to be a balance of sensitivity to the so-called authentic origin of a dish, but also an understanding that recipes aren't set in stone and dishes aren't set in stone. The difficulty comes when people co-opt a dish and say this is what it is, when it's not. In Africa, people are very wary of the West's interpretation and view of African culture, so I totally understand why, in the jollof rice instance, people got very upset.
Food is wrapped up in identity, cultural identity.
Food is all about identity. And this is why it's a very sensitive issue and why one has to be quite careful about how you approach it and how you talk about it. Because on the one hand, it's quite easy to be frivolous, as I often am, about, well, come on, it's just food. This goes right down to the core of people, their origins. No one can agree on any of these things, even within those cultures. So if you go to Genoa and you ask 10 people how you make pesto, you'll get 10 different answers.
But do they have more right to argue over the dish than you do?
If there's no central core dish that anyone can agree on, does that not imply that it is adaptable, it is changeable? In Britain, we're very good at being cultural magpies. For the most part, when it comes to food, is a good thing. We acknowledge the origins of something, but we bring it back here and we enjoy it. That's what culture is about.
Food blogger James Ramsden. You're listening to The Food Chain on the BBC World Service with me, Angela Saini. This week we're asking, whose food is it anyway? Never have we had more access to ideas about what to cook. Food writer James Ramsden has already told us that the internet has become a global hotbed for recipe sharing. But while you may not mind giving your apple pie recipe to the world, what if you're a chef and your profit comes from your plate? Well, Rolly Lee is an award-winning British chef who's run some of the UK's top restaurants for more than 30 years, and he's no stranger to having his food ideas borrowed. I spoke to him earlier about how it feels for a chef to see his or her own dish in someone else's restaurant.
Nobody sort of dreams up recipes just out of the ether, or very few people. You know, Simon Hopkinson, who's one of my great friend and one of the most respected chefs, reckons he's invented one dish in his life. And what we do is we take part in a tradition and try and hone it and modify it and develop it. But, you know, I think the trouble is there's a huge difference between intellectual property in the sense of something written down and a sort of craft tradition. And really, you know, recipes in terms of, they're secondary in terms of what chefs do.
Does anyone own food? Does any place own food?
No, quite simply no. And it shouldn't do, because one learns from one's colleagues. And you have to remember it's food. It goes off. You buy it, you take some lovely ingredients, you cook them, it gets eaten, it becomes sewage. You know, it's not some fixed point in history. It's a moving thing.
So in that sense, you seem to be saying that food cannot be treated as intellectual property.
No. I did a dish once which was a so-called signature dish, and it was called griddled scallops with pea puree and mint vinaigrette. And it was quite original at its time. Somebody else did something, they did lamb with scallops, and I thought that was a ridiculously silly idea. But it just got me to thinking there was something about the sweetness of the scallops and so on, and the close-grained texture that was similar to lamb. So I just sort of mused on the idea of scallops with mint and peas. So I did that, and it was incredibly successful, and it did get copied quite a lot. Every time I went somewhere and saw scallops with mint and peas, I was flattered, and I said, "Ooh, that's one of mine." But I didn't begrudge them doing it. But then a rather unscrupulous journalist, when I published the recipe, reproduced it word for word without a credit. And then I was genuinely upset, because I call that stealing, because, you know, apart from anything else, you know, I write for money. Those words, you know, have a value. They have a price. And it's something different. It is a piece of work in itself, a recipe that you write down. It has intellectual property. But ideas I don't think they do. That is how culture and things develop. Nobody works in isolation.
Rolly Lee there speaking to me earlier. With the world's top restaurants making millions from their food, is it possible for their intellectual property, their recipes, to be protected? Could we patent them the same way that we patent inventions? Well, this is sometimes an issue that reaches the courts. A number of years ago, New York chef Rebecca Childs brought a lawsuit against a former sous chef of hers who had opened a new restaurant nearby with a concept that Rebecca claimed was identical to hers. The issue in this particular case wasn't who owned a recipe, but who owned a business concept. The case has now been settled out of court. I asked Rebecca whether her experience might prompt her to patent her recipes.
You know, I would never consider trying to patent a recipe because the kind of cooking I do is relatively simple. It's taking the product and just trying not to mess it up. Not a lot of flavorings, not a lot of seasonings, taking a very simple thing, presenting it simply but perfectly. I think the only recipes that really can be patented are things that are more complex and therefore more unique. So what we're talking about in my situation is not patenting a single item, but protecting a business model.
I imagine, I mean, all over the world, there are chefs that open very successful restaurants or who introduce new cuisines to a city and then find copycat restaurants springing up, sometimes districts of the same.
It happens all the time. It happened to my restaurant. In fact, Ruth Reichel, who was the New York Times food reviewer for many years and then the Rand Gourmet magazine, said that this was the most copied concept she'd ever seen in her years in the food industry. And a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. In fact, so many in the last 17 years, I've watched many of them open and close. It's just a never-ending cavalcade of these, you know, sort of newfangled oyster bars that are serving sort of my menu slightly differently.
I mean, we hear writers do it, artists do it, songwriters do it, but when it comes to food, it's a different proposition.
Well, food and fashion, you know, are the new frontiers of trying to get protection. I understand that Europe has some protections that we probably will never have here, but it's certainly an interesting topic. I mean, I think most chefs feel that it would be a lost cause to try to protect their recipes, so they wouldn't even bother. I wouldn't bother trying to protect a recipe. But there are some chefs that are trying to create things. For instance, the Cantu in Chicago, molecular gastronomy is science. And I think some of those recipes are so complex that these folks are actually inventing equipment to make these recipes. I think those things are patentable. They involve technology, not just a recipe. I mean, this guy's inventing the actual equipment to cook these dishes. I mean, that's not the kind of chef I am. I'm pretty simple and straightforward. Give me some salt and pepper and a protein, and I'm happy. You know, what I do is not patentable, but that's not to say that what some of these chefs are doing now isn't.
Rebecca Charles. Rebecca's lawyer was Charles Valauskas. Based in Chicago, he's also represented other chefs and restaurants in matters of intellectual property. He explained to me earlier how copyright can sometimes be applied to food.
In the United States, copyright protects original works of authorship fixed in a tangible medium of expression. And what that means is that it's the idea a creative has in his or her head. They take it out of their head and they express it in some way. Copyright doesn't protect functional features. That protection is left for patents. So patents protect novel subject matter that has utility.
And how does that relate to chefs and what they do? So if I were to write a recipe, what's the best way of protecting that recipe to make sure that nobody else could copy it?
So there are 5 different forms of intellectual property. There's also trade secrets. So if this way of preparing this dish really isn't easily discernible by the public, just by the presentation of the dish, then you can protect the way of making that dish as a trade secret. We all watch the cooking shows on television. The chef will show you how to make a certain dish. You'll chop vegetables, you cook, and you'll saute. At the very end of it, the chef will say, and flavor to taste. That's the trade secret in that dish. It's in that flavoring. That's what takes a ordinary dish and makes it outstanding. It's all about the execution of the recipe. That's what's key. That's what makes a good chef, distinguishes a good chef from an average chef. So no chef is trying to prevent inspired creativity. Chefs are trying to prevent blatant copying.
You've been in this business a long time. You've been a lawyer for 30 years in this area. Do you find people are trying to protect their recipes and dishes more now than they used to?
I think so. First off, the stakes are much higher these days. For a high-end restaurant, you're talking about millions of dollars of investment. The investors, it wouldn't be smart on their part not to try to build some wall around the creations coming out of their kitchen. they know that they can get a return on their investment in a year, 2 years, it's going to take some time. So they need to build some wall around that in order to recoup on their investment. So we do see more use of intellectual property to protect the creations coming out of kitchens these days.
Chicago lawyer Charles Valauskas. So, unless you have a lot of time, deep pockets and a genuine invention, there's not a lot you can do to protect your recipe. But there is an exception. The European Union has passed legislation protecting certain products that it says are integral to the cultural heritage of the places they're from. Hundreds of foods and drinks, from British Stilton cheese to French cognac, are classified by the Geographical Indication Scheme, which says that to carry a certain name, a product must come from a specific place. But not everyone agrees. The food chain's Lucy Burns reports.
So I've come to a restaurant on Charlotte Place in London, which is in Fitzrovia in central London, and it's just about to be lunchtime. And I'm sitting here with Christian Pero, who's the owner of this restaurant. This is called In Parma.
If you ask anyone from Parma, they will defend their Parma ham, they will defend their Parmesan cheese, because we were born in this city, which is really dedicated to food.
Most of the products served at In Parma are covered by the European Union's geographical indication schemes. The 3 levels of geographical indication certify that certain foods can only be prepared, processed or produced in certain areas, or must have a specific regional character. Christian Pero thinks it's such an important concept that he built his restaurant around it.
My idea started when I was in US, and as I'm from Parma, I've seen on the shelves in a supermarket in New York Parmesan cheese, which was not made in my city, but it was made in Wisconsin. That product has been produced for centuries, and it makes sense not to permit to others to steal it.
Producers want to protect their heritage and make sure their customers aren't getting inferior products, but they also want to protect their markets. A recent survey by the EU showed that products with geographical indication status are nearly 2.5 times as expensive, so there's an obvious benefit to European producers and European governments. Daniel Rosario is the EU spokesperson for agriculture and rural development.
It's not about cashing in or some old Europe reputation on every product that is made in Europe, but on the other hand, if our producers are able to put in the market all these high-quality products, also due to, in some cases, some centuries of experience and know-how and perfectioning their methods, why not cashing in on that too?
The geographical indication schemes are legally binding within Europe. But the EU is also negotiating with its trade partners to expand the schemes outside its own borders. This is a complicated process. For one thing, many people in other parts of the world come from European backgrounds and say the heritage represented by the geographical indication schemes belongs to them too. Enrico Auricchio is the president of Belgioioso, one of the Wisconsin cheese companies which so shocked Christian Pero.
I came from Italy to United States, to Wisconsin, which is America's dairyland, in 1979. And we started making Italian cheese. The first cheese we made was provolone. And then we expanded our line to Parmesan, Asiago, Fontina, mozzarella, Gorgonzola. So we make a large variety of Italian cheeses.
According to US-EU trade negotiations currently underway, Enrico might have to stop calling some of his products by their original Italian names.
I really sympathize in their bad economic situation. They are trying to, protect everything that they can. But the world goes on. You cannot go beyond reason in protecting what was made hundreds of years ago.
Europe and America are currently renegotiating their trading relationship with an agreement called the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, and expanding the geographical indication schemes to the US has been one of the sticking points in the talks. For the EU, it's an issue of intellectual property. For the US, it's a barrier to free trade. Daniel Rosario of the EU.
It's certainly something on what the European Union is not willing to give up. But the United States also have very specific interests on this, and they will have to come up with a solution that is mutually beneficial, but it's also acceptable for us and for our producers.
And among manufacturers on both sides of the Atlantic, feelings run high. Enrico Auricchio.
In Italy, I'm considered an outlaw because I make Parmesan. Many times you can reproduce the same product in other places. You can make it the same. You can make it better. It's only a matter of culture, it's only a matter of effort, it's only a matter of selecting the right ingredients and taking the time.
Parmesan is still classified as a generic term, so it isn't currently covered by geographical indication schemes, only under the brand name Parmigiano-Reggiano. But Christian Perro says it's impossible anyway for cheese made outside Parma to taste the same.
And if you don't have, like, for example, this air that comes from the sea, and probably it's also like missing the raw material, which is, in this case, for the Parmesan cheese, is the milk. Could also, like, in some way taste similar, but it will never, ever taste like the same as, like, our Parmesan cheese.
Christian Perro ending that report from Lucy Burns. And that's your lot for this week's edition of The Food Chain. And if you like food, you might want to tune in to Boston Calling on the World Service this week. It's a melting pot menu. They're featuring a tamale Thanksgiving in Texas, a Vietnamese sandwich shop in Boston, a Japanese brewer in San Diego. And as for us, we want to hear your thoughts. Would you want to patent your recipes, or are you an enthusiastic borrower of world cuisines?